Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight on I believe this is my third live event, where I'm able to speak directly to the citizens of Kootenai County, where I'm looking to represent. I'm greatly looking forward to representing the great people of the Kootenai County area for sheriff. For those of you who are joining me from around Eastern Washington, Western Washington, Montana, Southern Idaho, throughout the great continental United States and beyond, welcome. And I greatly appreciate you being here. We are simultaneously broadcasting on Instagram, Facebook, and X. So this is our first time on this platform. If we have any kind of technical details, please let us know. That way we can tweak things here. I'm joined tonight by my wife, Donna, who is going to be helping me off camera with any questions that you guys are sending through. I'm not working off of my actual phone. I'm just staring at a camera. So bear with me if things aren't exactly the way we would like them to be. How important is it that a candidate be endorsed by the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, the KCRCC for short? In Kootenai County, the very conservative side of the Republican Party is primarily run through the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. And if you want to get the endorsement of the Central Committee, you have to go through the process. And the endorsement, of course, used to be important years past. The reason why is that a lot of times people are lazy and don't want to actually look up who they're voting for or what propositions, levies, etc. So they rely on a mailer that the KCRCC sends out countywide to voters so that when they go to the ballot box, all they have to do is look at the list and check it off. Now, it is very handy because there are a lot of candidates, but really, I believe that the KCRCC currently is an outdated method. And I think that we have seen the past couple of years a failure for the party to maintain good conservative candidates. And while they have ostracized the more left-leaning side of the Republican Party, who had to go form their own group, KCRCC has in itself, from my observations, become more or less the very thing that they complained about in years past. So a lot of the people that are on the committee are great people, friends of mine, and I have the utmost respect, but the organization as a whole, I think, needs a house cleaning. And nobody, it seems, that is running for office on the conservative side wants to say that. And I don't have any issues with calling things out the way I see them. When I first entered into the race back in October of last year, I had high hopes that I would be able to get a fair shake with the vetting committee, and that's the group that gets together to kind of do the pre-vetting, and then they take their results and let the rest of the voting membership vote on who they think would be the best choice. And part of that process includes a survey that each candidate must fill out. And the candidates fill out these surveys, and then it is used as part of your resume, so to speak, for the committees to review. My own experience for the process is a little bit odd, and maybe there are others that have run for office that have faced similar circumstances to those that I found myself in. But here's where mine began. I have been going to KCRCC events on and off for the better part of 3 years. I know that there's rumors out there that somehow nobody has ever seen me at these functions or events, but I've gone to the Lincoln Day dinners, I've gone to the Tuesday night meetings, I've gone to various functions that they have throughout the years and meetings and gatherings. And what you find out is a lot of the same people that are on the KCRCC board are also active in other groups around the community. So when I entered the race back in October of last year, that's when I did my official filing with the Secretary of State. It was just a couple months prior to my general announcement back in December that I was going to run. I had a friend, or have a friend, who knew that I was going to be running as a Republican, And this individual I've known for, I don't know, probably close to 15, maybe 20 years. And we go a ways back on the other side of the border. And this individual was privy to the fact that I was running for sheriff, that I was going to be challenging Bob Norris. And early November, right before the last general election in Kootenai County, I received a message from this friend of mine who had up to this point been a pretty big supporter. And I believe that they were sincere when they came to me, but the story went like this. They were at a function that they were getting ready to, I believe, put mailers out for the upcoming election in November. And my friend had said to some people, hey, I know a guy that's going to be running for sheriff, and was singing my praises and talking about some of the exciting things that I had on the horizon. And I received one day a text message in early November where this friend said, hey, have you ever thought about running for sheriff in Shoshone County, which is the adjacent county to the east? I don't live anywhere near Shoshone County. I'm way up northwest of Kootenai County. And I responded and said, hey, I don't live in Shoshone. Well, that started a conversation, and what they told me is that Rob Barron's vice chair of the Central Committee was in a discussion with this friend and was strongly urging me not to run because I was going to split the vote. And there was a bunch of other, bogus reasons as to why Bob Norris should not be challenged. And I'm in somewhat disbelief as I'm hearing this, but I responded back in kind and argued as to why all those were completely false. Now, to Rob's credit, I don't believe that Rob actually knew my name at this point, but what emerged out of this conversation was that the Central Committee wanted to control who got a chance to be a candidate for the elections. So this is coming from the vice chair who's telling my friend, hey, this guy should not run. And the idea that we would be splitting the race, the vote, so to speak, in a primary is completely ridiculous. That's what you do in a primary. You slug it out with your opponents, and the best man or woman continues after the primary, whoever gets the most votes, to the general election. So anyway, that was kind of my very first go around with somebody from the KCRCC stating, hey, you really shouldn't run. We're happy with our candidate, and basically bug off. Well, I don't believe in that. I believe in the original principles of the Republican Party, which is we're a representative republic, and every 2, 4, 6, however many years the office holds, we get to challenge our leaders, and we either get to win the people by greater ideas or capabilities, or we lose. And the person that the people choose, remember, we, the people, get to choose who we want to go on to represent us. So fast forward to, I guess it would have been December, the very first part of December, when I decided to run. And at my kickoff rally, I had people showing up specifically to ask absurd questions who happened to be on the KCRCC board and in government. One of those individuals who is not on the board but is very influential, I would call him, my personal belief, as the de facto leader of the local party, not Brent Reagan, is Bruce Matari, who is now Special Deputy Matari. He has that special deputization from Bob Norris, the current sheriff. So, Bruce was there at my kickoff rally, and he wanted to punch a bunch of dumb questions where he was talking absolute nonsense. He's pulling stuff out of his kazoo. That's, nicely said instead of his, what. But anyway, you think that's funny?
Good one.
I'm talking to the camera, so it's like I'm looking at the mirror.
Censoring in real time.
But, coming in there, instead of listening to what I had to say, wants to immediately try to kill the baby before it gets out of the cradle. And one of the other individuals the other two individuals, the two ladies, happened to be on the KCRCC vetting committee. Now, I was tipped off that they were coming and that they were going to attempt to sabotage me. So I know that for a fact. I was given, that message prior, so I was ready for them. But these two individuals, Terry and Nina, continue to follow me at every public speaking event and continued to ask the same ridiculous questions where they're not actually wanting to know about my ideas and who I am and find out, hey, is this guy actually a good conservative, believe in conservative values? No, we're just going to immediately berate and attack because he dares to challenge the sheriff. And there's a local forum that I was on, and people were on that forum as well that are heavily involved in the party. Same thing. I mean, you talk about conservative values and you try to let the community know that you're so-called conservatives, and yet by your very conduct and the things that were said, you're anything but true conservatives. You don't adhere to the true Republican ideology. So anyway, as time progressed, I eventually filled out my survey back first part of January and sent that in. I'm going to be talking about that survey here in just a second. But it became apparent very early on, as I've said prior, and the reason that I chose to break from the Republican Party at this time and place and to run as an independent, it was very obvious that Dan Wilson was never going to have a chance, a valid chance, to be compared against Bob Norris for who really is best fit to be representative of the people as the chief law enforcement entity in the county. I had my survey filled out, went to my first, I think it was intake meeting with a couple of the vetting committee members, great people. I had a very good conversation with them. It was respectful. But right after that, when I had my formal interview with more committee members, that's where things went sideways. Now, the majority of the people in that committee are really good people, and I have nothing but the utmost respect. But prior to me walking into this interview, Brent Reagan, the chairman of the Central Committee, passes me in the doorway and says, hey, I got this appointment with my wife and I can't be in here. Now, I'm not a voting member, but this is the reason I can't stay to hear your questions and answers to those questions that we're going to ask. Now, I understand he's not a voting member, but at no time did Brent Reagan ever make himself available to meet me from the time that I entered into the race until I separated from the Republicans this go around. And I think that's an important thing to consider for the people in Kootenai County. Now, I know Brent's a busy man, but still, you would think that he would be very interested in having a one-on-one with a candidate. In fact, in early February, when I went to speak with the pachyderms, I was in attendance there with Brent, who made no move to come over and say hello. We were in a pretty small room. So I got up, went over and introduced myself. So Brent, you have a real superiority complex that exudes off of you. And I don't know if that's intentional or what, but I'm telling you, as a potential candidate for your organization, that was the vibe that was sent off. Also, I was supposed to have a pastor that was sitting on the board that he did not attend as well. So the group that was left, nice group of people, except for one, and that was Nina, who sat on the vetting board as well. And she was one of the two ladies, her and Terry, that continually showed up at every one of my events with just hostility. And she was so hostile in that meeting that I actually stopped the questions, and I looked at the rest of the committee members and I implored them, how am I supposed to have a fair shake when one of your own committee members is not even hiding their disdain? So it looks like we have a couple questions.
Not a question. I popped a comment up on the screen. It's Kootenai County GOP, which I am going to, the disclaimer is this is I think we're going to call it a parody account.
Sure.
But it's relevant to what you're talking about right now, asking who gave you the attitude, and then they're naming names, Bev, Nina, Terry,
yeah,
and who was on the vetting committee. Right. And you're covering that now, but I did put that up on the screen for anybody who's joining us and maybe in the middle of what you're talking about.
So all this really was indicative of an organization that is a close clique. That's really what my belief is currently of the Central Committee. They've lost their vision, which is to promote and help elect certified conservative individuals. And I'm going to talk a little bit about out more as to why I believe that to be true. I'm not complaining and complaining that I don't have sour grapes, so to speak. I'm just telling you exactly the way it was and is. And if any of those committee members wants to argue with me, I'm more than happy at a future date to do a live with them, and we'll have these discussions. But I'm going over it fast, so hopefully I haven't dropped any of the details. But the Central Committee has lost its vision. And rather than looking for the best representatives of the Republican Party to be our leaders, they are fixed on keeping their people in place. It's almost like a high school clique. So the survey that we had to fill out, I published here about a week ago on our website, theidahosheriff.com. Once the KCRCC published all the candidates that they have endorsed, and it's now official, their endorsement list, they posted the survey results of those individuals as well. You guys can go to theidahosheriff.com and look for the comparison of my responses to Bob Norris's. It's lengthy. I'm going to hit a couple, and I'm going to kind of prove my point as to why I believe that the Central Committee is not truly committed to finding the best candidate. When a question is asked, my belief is it's like any job resume. You need to be able to articulate exactly the response to the question. That gives those that are reviewing your resume the ability to see who you really are and to see intellectually, do you truly understand not only the party and the platform, but the form of government and even what the elected position requirements are. So I'm gonna kind of reference these again. If you go to the website, you can see a comparison where we publish the question, and in one column you have my response, and in the other column you have Bob Norris's. So I'm going to tell you just a quick one here. The first question was, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, how long you've lived in the area, and your occupation. Now, I went through, you can see right here, that's my entire list. So it's a little over almost the entire page. And I went into my background, all the things that need to paint who I, as a man, am to those people that are vetting me. Here's what Sheriff Norris's response is. Married, children, and grandchildren, Kootenai County. I purchased my home in 2013, 33 years in law enforcement. Now, in contrast, I tell where I was born, when I became a resident of Kootenai County, that I was married, how many children I had, what those adult children are doing, where I graduated from school, the small businesses that I own, when I was a reserve police officer, in the positions and some of the awards that I received, my hobbies, my interests. In other words, a pretty robust review. But either Bob Norris doesn't have the ability to truly put his full effort into, maybe it was trivial to him, or maybe he just thinks that he had a lock on it, so he wasn't going to be bothered. You guys can be the judge of that. Don't just take my words for the truth. Go back and read them yourself. One of the questions, please tell us about your activity as a Republican. And I talked about the fact that I canvassed for Republican candidates before I was even old enough to legally vote. And I talked about being on the Young Republicans board and all the different legislators and campaigns that I had worked on and some of those involvements. Bob's response is, I have walked Kootenai County precincts for conservative Republican candidates. Here's an important one. What is the purpose of government? And among the things that I put in there was the primary purpose to secure our rights to life, liberty, and property, which are the natural laws of God. Government exists to secure our rights in three ways: from domestic violence, which is, people in your community that try to deprive you of that life, liberty, and property. Or number two, from foreign threats. That's our military. Think of that as a federal level. And three is protect us from government itself, because, and I want people to remember this, a government that is strong enough and capable enough and powerful enough to secure your rights is also very well capable of depriving you of your rights. So I went into detail on that. Here's what Bob's response is. What is the purpose of government? Limited government, protection of rights, maintain law and order, national security. Bravo, Bob. Maybe you got that from Dan Gookin's Government for Dummies. I don't know.
As you get ready to continue, one of the comments is that his short answers, or almost lack thereof, goes to show that he doesn't care. Maybe he believes he's going to win. So it didn't warrant actually answering the questions. You can comment on that.
And I would say again, look, the vetting committees all had the same information that I have right now. So they had my results and they had Bob's. And you would think that once they actually started seeing the evidence and the contrast rather between the two, that would give them pause. But again, they doubled down many of those individuals. So describe why you're running for this particular office. And I stated, I will be the sheriff to protect all Kootenai County citizens' rights with leadership, enthusiasm, innovation, and extreme ownership. I will become the buffer between an out-of-control federal government and the people. Here's what Bob's response is. And again, every one of his responses is in all caps. Protect our rights and community. What are your qualifications? I'm not going to go through this because mine's almost 2.5 pages long, because I really wanted people to understand exactly what I bring to the table with all of my life experiences, which are extremely well-rounded. Bob's response was 33 years law enforcement. That's not somebody you necessarily want to represent you as the chief law enforcement entity of the county. So I think I gave close to 10 bullet points as to what my qualifications are. And then goals. Here's another important one. Goals. What are your goals? I placed 10 down there, which includes to maintain equal protection under the law, to develop an effective strategy for reining in an out-of-control federal government, specifically concerning excessive force and unlawful warrants by federal agencies, to develop a reserve deputy program, to develop a citizens posse of vetted individuals to assist the sheriff's office in times of need, to help maintain law and order and security as mandated by law. I go on to say to combat the trafficking of humans, drugs, and illegal weapons, to bring the community together, to honor the North Idaho culture and impartial enforcement of the law as written, to stand against the implementation of disastrous policies afflicting California and the dereliction of prosecutorial duty by the DOJ. And of course, California is a tip of the hat to our sheriff, who spent 33 years as a deputy in Los Angeles County. So here's what his response was. Mine was 10. His is, what is his goals? Continue to protect our rights and community, prepare community for growth and threats. I'm going to do one last one, and then I'm going to get to some more questions here. Do you describe yourself as fiscally conservative, and please elaborate? And my response is yes. I believe the government should only spend the amount of taxpayer money that it takes to efficiently run our government to secure the rights of the people. I am for low taxes and minimal government spending. I do not support going further into debt for the sake of giving our precious treasure to countries who hate us and are run by communists. And as Frederick Bassier wrote in his book, The Law, that's from the 1800s, you can look that up. I too object to legalized plunder. And actually that was written in the 18th century, 1700s. Bob's response is, yes, I believe the government should be as small as it needs to be to adequately deliver services required by statute. Think about that. He wants government to be as big as required by statute. Well, last I checked, we have a lot of people in Congress and even at the state level, and looking at some of the things that were passed this week to maintain services and provide welfare for illegal invaders. I would argue and say, Bob, it should be limited to just what is necessary to secure our rights and to cut off anything that is in excess of that. Anybody else out there agree with me, or do they agree with Bob that you want to fund the government as required by statute? Anyway, you can go and look at that yourself at our website. You can download the comparison. Look, if you don't believe that these answers are from Bob, then go download them from the KCRC website yourself. But I think it is telling.
On our website, the idahosheriff.com, there is the post that shows the comparison answers side by side, but we've linked multiple times in that post straight to the KCRCC website, so that it's showing transparency, that it will load Bob's answers straight from the KCRCC website.
Sure.
Easy to find.
Okay, so kind of in conclusion, the reason that I decided to jump from the Republican Party this time around, because I'm not saying that I'm abandoning the Republican Party for good, like Dale Gibney, I think, said, who's running for county commissioner. And I understand why he would be frustrated, but it's specifically because when you added up all of those things that took place at the very beginning, and for somebody that put $20,000 of my own money when I started the campaign to seed the campaign, to see it all go up in smoke because the gold star, the gold standard that we're all led to believe is the KCRCC voter recommendation card. They spend, I think, $50,000 to $60,000 and send it out to the voters. That's not the gold standard. And I knew that there was no way, given the way people were acting, not traditional conservative Republican values, but with their own agendas, which include Special Deputy County Commissioner Bruce Matari and Bob Norris. So look, the writing's on the walls. And I plan on giving Bob Norris one hell of a fight for the next 8 months. So we'll see what he has to say going into November. But look, if you're a Republican still, I do not blame you. I think that the Republican Party as a whole needs to be cleaned out. There's a lot of people throwing around the word rhino. I don't think they even know what that means. But here's something else that I've observed. Since 2020, a lot of people have been red-pilled. Their eyes have been opened. The problem is they are talking about liberty and conservatism without truly knowing what that means and where it comes from and where we get this idea of life, liberty, and property. It's kind of similar to people that know 3 verses in the Bible and then want to go out and start evangelizing people. You can know these things and in your heart believe them to be true. You know, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that verse. But if you don't understand the rest of the Bible and the context, you can't really argue the truths very well. And I think there's a lot of people right now caught up in the local central committee who have blindly followed the leadership, thinking that, you know, these individuals are truly conservative and we don't need to question them. And as conservatives, always question everybody. As Bob Norris likes to say, judge somebody off of their past record. And I think the same applies right now for politics all over this country. Remember, we can't do anything, folks, on a federal level. That one's pretty much burned and gone. State level is iffy. We have fabulous state reps here that are doing everything they can to keep Kootenai County and keep Idaho conservative. But look, the things that we can really change here in Kootenai County is who we elect into office. And I'm seeing also a lack of men of courage. I'm frequently told, hey, I want to say something. I know what's going on. I know the lies. I know the bullying. I know the intimidation that's going on, but I can't say anything because I may lose business, or I may not be invited to the Republican parties that the individuals have, the barbecues, or you know what? Here's another one. People tell me frequently the minute that it is known an individual is leaning towards following Dan Wilson for sheriff, they get a special visit by Bob Norris or Bruce Matari.
In fact, we'd love to hear from somebody who was brave enough to say, it was evidence that I was showing interest in Dan Wilson, and I got a special phone call from Bob Norris or Bruce Matari. We know it's happening.
Yeah, we
bold enough to
every
speak up.
event that we have, it's the same thing. And I have to question and say, in a county that supposedly as red as they come, that espouses Republican conservative ideas based on the Bill of Rights, if you have a group of people that are fearful of their government officials, something's wrong with that picture. And I can tell you that my conservative beliefs are what guide me through life. My faith in Jesus Christ is what guides me in the Bible. I'm a sinner, I mess up, I have to confess all the time. But I'm here to tell you that you will never see Dan Wilson going after somebody because they're not one of my followers. I'm going to be a sheriff that protects everyone equally. Doesn't matter whether you are a liberal Democrat. Doesn't matter if you're a Marxist. If you're into children chopping off their genitals in order to change their genders mechanically. I don't agree with those things, but I will give you every bit as much protection under the Constitution as you are afforded under the Bill of Rights. And I'm not going to play this special game to where you don't believe like I do, therefore I'm not going to best represent you, or I'm not going to give you the time of day. I'll argue my morals with anybody, anytime, any place, but it's not my job as sheriff to force my views onto somebody else. And I frequently get asked, well, why don't I go and shut drag events down, drag parades or drag shows? And look, we have to operate under the law. If you don't like the way laws are, or county ordinances, or city laws, permit processes, then you, the people, need to go after these elected officials or unelected bureaucrats that are appointed by elected officials, and you need to right the ship. But yeah, this sheriff will never intimidate somebody because you're not in my camp. So
one of the Bob Norris's answers on that KCRCC survey was regarding fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
Do you have any evidence, or can you talk about some areas where he he answers that he's fiscally responsible, but what are some displays that he might not be that you've noted from his time in office?
Well, I don't know how you can be a good representative of the people and balance, or rather manage, close to a $40 million budget if you don't actually go through and audit the books and audit exactly what your people are doing with the money that they are allotted. I think that goes for any government official. If you're not routinely going through true audits. Now, look, I understand the county as a whole gets audited, once a year by, outside sources, but locally here, Bob Norris, if you've never done an actual true, audit, then why are you going and asking the taxpayers for more money? Why is it every kind of solution ends with tax dollars? And you keep talking about this, one of the things that Bob's running on is responsible growth. And I think sometimes he intermixes it with smart growth, which is, part of the UN agenda, I think 2030 and smart cities and things like that. But, look, the sheriff's job is not to be messing around with things that are the county commissioner's purview. Stay in your lane, balance your budgets, manage your budgets accordingly, cut waste where you need to, and let the people get a reprieve from constant raising of taxes. The people in Kootenai County are suffering from the past 4 years of the Biden administration. The taxing that has gone on that isn't, what most people think of taxation, but inflation is definitely taxation. When you go to the grocery store and it now runs you 2 times what it did in 2019, or you go to the gas pump and you're paying, my little rig, I think a Phillip now is $70 compared to 35, 4 years ago. People have enough to worry about trying to survive without having another tax added to them. So if you're a fiscal conservative, Bob, and Special Deputy Bruce Matari, you probably should start looking at the things that we could actually cut and figure out a solution by bringing in experts. I don't know if you ever think about bringing in experts outside of your own echo chamber to actually advise you. And these should be individuals that are not tied to government. But I don't know, that's just me from a 25-year businessman perspective.
One of the comments is that Bob and his deputies are the comment is at every county commission meeting asking for more money. Now, of course, I'm not going to bring proof for that being the exact case, that they're every single one of them asking for more money. But we know that does happen. And so that's one of the things that you addressed is what are some other solutions that don't continue to burden taxpayers?
Yeah, and I think, again, there's nothing wrong with cutting things until you actually can prove it on paper that it is a necessity. Then you have no business arguing that you must keep something. So I don't like when people put a gun to the head, proverbial gun to the head of the taxpayer and say, if you don't give us more money, this is what's going to happen. You're not going to get law enforcement services. Your house may burn down. I mean, all the typical threats that take place. Look, we need to have a conversation with the general public and say, if you don't want more taxes, which I haven't met one person yet that is willing to pay more taxes to send to the sheriff's office, then what are the things that we actually don't need, and what are the people willing to forego in order for us to take care of the basic functions of the sheriff's office? And that question should be asked. Look, we've talked about this before. In the 90s and early 2000s, the federal government through the DOJ and other grants were pouring money, mostly for the war on drugs, into local agencies. And once you start giving agencies money by people that don't have to actually earn that money and aren't responsible, they find ways to spend it. As a contractor or commercial general contractor who works for state and federal entities, I've seen this firsthand. Even in big corporations, if they don't spend the money, they don't get it. And so they come up with all sorts of reasons that they need the money, and they can argue that they need it, and they can say it with a straight face because they truly believe it. But somebody from an outside perspective can come in and rifle through the needs versus the wants and cut that out pretty quick. So
when you win, what is the conversation with the current administration? What is that conversation going to look like? And then the second part of that is, do you think that many people are going to leave? They're like, Dan Wilson's in office, I'm out of here.
Well, look, that is always a threat. Every cop, every deputy that has worked for any amount of time goes through changes. When I was with Spokane PD, I think there were 3 chiefs in 4 years. When I was at Liberty Lake, we went through 2. And of course, sheriffs can get changed out every 4 years. So it's a known thing that the troops just continue to do their jobs with the utmost professionalism that they can. And really their interaction a lot of times is with the command staff, the captains and lieutenants that carry out the day-to-day operations. So yeah, I smirk when people tell me that 80 or 90% are going to quit. That's just simply not true. And I think it's absolutely arrogant if you do have deputies that are threatening that, because they don't even know me. They don't know anything about my management style and the things I'm willing to do to support my deputies, because as somebody that's been in business for 25 years, my greatest assets, my greatest resources are my people. And if I don't have my people, nothing else matters. No piece of equipment, no other tangible asset is valuable if I don't have the people to actually implement it. So now, what am I going to say with the current staff when I get there? Well, that's still to be determined. I have a general outline, and I'm not going to reveal that, but here's what we're going to do is we're going to have a frank conversation. And the individuals that I have that are going to be coming in to assist me, law enforcement professionals that have a very good pulse of what's going on in the sheriff's office, they're going to help assist me as we start evaluating from top to bottom exactly what's going on. And everybody that has been doing their job, that has been living up to their oath and to their calling, they're going to be rewarded, and we're going to assist them at finding whatever career path that they want inside the sheriff's office. And to those that have been not doing good, and I have no idea how many or if there are, well, we're going to find that out too, and people will be held accountable. We are not going to tolerate any kind of nefarious or below the surface actions. If you've been doing wrong, we are going to root that out. But my belief is we generally have a good group of men and women who are upholding their oaths. They just need good leadership to somebody to bring back in the idea of an extreme ownership model, to give everybody a chance to become leaders in their own fields and to not be micromanaged, but to be supported because they have been clearly shown what the mission is and what the parameters are, where the boundaries are, and then having a cohesive group of individuals that can cover for each other when the lifting gets hard. So, we come in and assist our fellow partners, and that also spreads to the other law enforcement agencies inside Kootenai County, whether it's Rathdrum PD, whether it's Spirit Lake, whether it's Post Falls, whether it's Coeur d'Alene. The sheriff's office is in a very unique position because the sheriff is the chief law enforcement elected official, the chief officer in the county, and the sheriff should be setting the example for not only his own troops, but also for other law enforcement that is providing services in the county.
I'm Donna Wilson, sitting off here to Dan's left. I had to make sure I had my directions right. And I'm the campaign communications and media director. That's for transparency. We don't hide that that's the case. I have done these type of things professionally for a lot of years. So I'm having a lot of fun working on the campaign. One of the conversations that also, let me say, welcome to our live broadcast. Leave your questions in the comment section on any platform that you're watching on, and Dan's going to answer those. One of the things, because you've had this question about how you're going to interact with staff when you're elected, the possibility of people walking off the job. I liked a conversation that you and I had at one time where you said, this isn't unique to law enforcement.
Right.
This can happen when management changes hands or ownership changes over in a company. And how many people have been through a situation like that that's not unique to law enforcement?
Right.
And I think that's another case where your experience, not only in law enforcement, but also in the private sector, lends itself well to that type of environment because it isn't unique to that field.
And I think you're right. I care about people. I care about the people that serve under me. I care for my own personal employees. They are very, very valuable to me, not only as part of the team, but also as individuals. And I would like to think that to a certain degree, we could have the same relationship with the men and women who serve in the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. There's a lot of talent and experience, and we're not going to change how individuals are doing their jobs. So we're not going to be making radical changes, but what we are going to be doing is making certain that the environment in Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is one of impartiality and one on merit. So if you are getting promoted and doing things the hard way and deserve to get that promotion, then that's what you're going to get. But if you are just phoning it in and you're not applying yourself, then yeah, you're probably not going to like me very much. But also the command staff that I'm going to be placing around me, I think the men and women of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office are going to be pleasantly surprised to see who I'm bringing on as the undersheriff.
What is the first thing you do or that you outline on day one, the question is day one, but maybe early on to combat the drug problem that's invading Kootenai County? I mean, one, is it a known issue that there is a drug problem invading Kootenai County? What are some plans you have on how you're going to deal with that?
Well, day one, everybody says they're going to do 100 things on day one. I think we're talking more about the first 30 and 90 days. But yeah, we're definitely going to be putting together a task force to address what's going on. And I've said this from the very beginning. Our problems right now that we're facing in Kootenai County with the drug epidemic is caused by the unsecure open border. That is where the root of all of our problems, I should say primarily our problems, are coming from. So we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to team up with other agencies, and we're going to have to hit this hard. Look, we can't stop what's going on at the southern border, but we can harden this area better. We're going to go after those that are trafficking people through our county and attempting to suck up our resources. We've outlined that. I know I've outlined it several times in other live events, and I won't necessarily go into those details, but we're going to be looking at all of these. We're going to be bringing in outside experts in these fields to consult with us. I think that one of the things that we're probably facing in Kootenai County, and this happens a lot of times in the business world as well, is stagnation. You get too used to doing something a certain way. You haven't been challenged. You haven't grown. You haven't come up and kept current on what, new techniques or what current events are that you really need to be combating outside of, you might get some captains, lieutenants, or sergeants to go to a seminar every once in a while. And there's sometimes, exchanging of information for the various task forces. But I think that we really need to bring in outside consultants that have a background in law enforcement to help us get a new perspective on exactly what our focus should be. And that's going to be very huge when it comes to human trafficking. One of the things that I am passionate about is stopping and rooting out all forms of human trafficking, whether it's slave labor or down to the most heinous of heinous, which is the sex trafficking of our children and the children of this country. We know from the stats that it is the number one criminal enterprise, and the United States, I believe, is the leader in the world for the consumption of sex slaves and children trafficking. So there are groups that I am plugged in with that I highly respect. They are highly efficient with former high-speed law enforcement and military individuals that will be advising and helping us in order to get a new perspective on how to combat this. And I need the support of the public. Every chance you get, spread this message around that we are going to root this out of our community, because if we cannot protect the most vulnerable among us, then who are we as Americans? This is something as a kid growing up, it never crossed my mind that this rampant abuse, the most heinous abuse that you can possibly imagine being done to children, was ever going to be what it is now as a man that's, almost in my fifth decade.
I don't know whether or not this one is correct. Do you know whether or not Norris has said he won't be part of a task force to combat drugs until the borders close? I don't know if that.
Well, I think to be fair, he has said this in at least one of his town halls last fall. I think he's actually said it several times that I've been in attendance of his coffee with a cop. The ones where he brings like 12 of his staff members to these little coffee talks with him.
We've seen it.
What he has said is that he's been requested by federal agencies, it might have even been state, to lend some deputies to sign on to a task force to help combat drugs. And his response is he's not going to loan them out, not going to provide them until they seal the southern border. So, that's his own statements. Anybody can go back and look at the various groups in Kootenai County that frequently go to these town halls and record them and then publish them. I think Coeur d'Alene Freedom Watch is one. I think North Idaho Exposed is another. Kootenai Journal, there's just to name a few. But look, I think it's hilarious to see Bob Norris trying to play catch up on the illegal invasion that he, up until recently, and frankly, he still hasn't bought off that it's a huge issue that's facing us. And look, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I truly believe that Kootenai County is just as vulnerable to terrorist attacks by any of the males, in fact, that you and I, when you and I went down with Cade Lamb to the Arizona border back in January, and we firsthand saw hundreds of these military-aged males unaccompanied, no border patrol around from Africa and the Middle East. So it is definitely an issue, and we have to come up with solutions. Norris recently was testifying in front of the Idaho House. I think it was a subcommittee.
Oh.
It was a hearing. And here's a couple things of contrast for you people out there. So Bob was pleading, begging. He said several times, I'm begging you to help us get more tools in the toolbox. Well, look, as a sheriff, you should never beg anybody. There is nobody at a state level that is worth groveling to. I implore of you, I strongly recommend.
Did it have to do with begging for the passing of a bill that would somehow bring more funding, or
yeah,
was it related?
I believe that's exactly what it was. It was for a House bill that was coming up, and it was specifically, he talks a lot about the way he voted, his town halls. Come see how I voted. And let me dispel a little myth for you. For those of you that aren't familiar with the way government runs, it's the state legislators, the House members, the Senate members who pass legislation, and then it's signed into law by the governor. Sheriff does not vote on any legislation, period. Now, what he's doing, because people aren't paying attention, is it sounds cool, but he's a part of the Idaho Sheriff's Association. And they, of course, have their lobbyist. So they all get together. I think there's 44 total sheriffs in the state of Idaho. They get together and talk about what is important for their lobbyists to lobby the state legislature for that legislative session. And so a lot of times Bob will get on there and he's like, I voted this way. And it's like, okay, Bob, you're one of 44. But you, Bob, also have the ability to individually go to not only the local state representatives, but to also visit them down in Boise to specifically address these things that to be true. But I'm not hearing any substance. So he's not actually coming up with any real solution. Contrast that to the ideas that I've floated out there, have been ridiculed. In fact, Bob has misquoted me and attempted to rewrite what I said. Maybe that's why he doesn't like us recording his live events. But yeah. That I think that is kind of where we're at on it. Bob does not truly believe that there is any kind of a invasion issue, and he thinks that people that are seeing individuals in our own community that look like a duck, quack like a duck, those individuals are not here just working with their temporary visas. They're specifically here for other reasons, and a lot of them are passing through. They're not necessarily staying right here, but then again, we don't know everything.
While we're on the subject of Bob Norris's town halls, what would you say some of the problems are with the format? It's been a common format that we've seen because we've been at several, and we know that he's followed this format, but he'll come prepared with a pre-done survey of questions, and then everybody fills it out, and it's a multiple choice answer.
It's slapstick. Yeah, so this started sometime, I think, in late 2023, but Bob basically was having these town hall events, and he would have these questionnaires filled out. So what are the 5 things that are most important to you in Kootenai County? And look, I understand that a lot of us are going to have, maybe 2 or 3 similar ones, but why don't you actually allow the people to bring to the front what their concerns are? And what that is that's really manipulation. It's change agent stuff. Look, folks, if you don't know what a change agent is, you must study it. It's a Marxist tactic. It's where you take an individual that is leading a meeting or a group, with these pre-planned questions and predetermined answers that they have that they're going to try to steer people into accepting as, yeah, we thought of this, and they don't really. And the way they accomplish this is the moderator, the facilitator, normally has one or two agents in the audience that don't seemingly know each other, and they work in conjunction to help manipulate the people in the audience to get on the path of what the change agent is attempting to accomplish. Folks, you must really be aware of this, because this is happening. I have seen the Solinsky tactics myself here in Kootenai County, and most folks have no idea what's going on. You have to be vigilant. You have to really, really pay attention. And if somebody's pushing you as a local leader into something you know is not right, well, then voice it and don't let them bully you. So these little questionnaires that Bob and Bruce put out, and you know, everybody finds their seat, and 10 minutes later he's having everybody get up and go fill out the survey and turn it in, and then it's this slapstick. And Bruce Matari always has his running commentary like he's a great Alex Trebek, listing off what people's concerns are with his side commentaries, and then the sheriff gets to comment a little bit on it, and no questions actually ever get asked. Now, at the conclusion, there is a Q&A. But you know what? If you've ever noticed, when Bob and Bruce don't have their group of sycophants, those loyal supporters.
Now you've gotten in trouble for calling them sycophants.
They're sycophants.
Getting yourself in trouble.
And to this point, at that show your proof three-ring circus that they ran a few weeks ago, there were a couple individuals in the audience at the end that were asking hard questions. And you can watch on one of those videos where Bruce Matari got pretty upset at the question. And he actually ripped the papers that the gentleman had written his questions on. And so you know that you are involved with change agents when they get hostile, extremely hostile towards getting questions that weren't supposed to slip through. Now, as somebody who has attended many of these Q&A sessions, look, there's a lot of times that people want to actually give you a statement rather than to ask you a question. They want to get on their soapbox and they want to tell you everything about them and why they believe something to be true rather than to ask a question. In a lot of these formats, that's not the proper, place to do it. So written questions are important, but be very careful that the moderator is truly allowing the good questions to come through. Kind of like Donna here, I know that she's not screening them, because we'll take whatever hard questions that you want, but watch for the change agents. When you start paying attention, and I would love for you to let me know. Either you can email me at info@the-Idaho Sheriff. You can hit me a direct message on any of the platforms. If you are at any of these events and you notice those tactics, let me know. I want all the people in Kootenai County that are true conservatives that adhere to Republican values and the principles of conservatism. You start noticing that, share it with me, would you? And then call it out. Call it right out in those meetings. Don't let them get by with it.
Well, you've given a couple good examples of how to spot a change agent. Maybe you can review those real quick, add to that list. Yeah. So if you're saying, you're now suggesting, look, the change agents are here. Actually, I'm curious what you would say. Are they here already in the local Republican Party?
Absolutely.
How do you spot them?
Well, you spot them because when they start, when the group that is participating starts being silenced in their ideas and the things that they want to bring up and they want to discuss, if they're continually sidelined or if it's deflected, and the moderator kind of shames you as an individual for what you're thinking, and then you get somebody else from the group that says, yeah, your idea sucks and we don't agree with that, and the moderator is right. Those are some telltale signs. There's a guy that I listened to from Kootenai County. He ran a podcast. It was a radio show actually every week for many, many years, named John Leffler. John Leffler, if you can ever find any of his old broadcast, Steel on Steel, I would highly encourage you to look at the things that he used to cover, because he was really, really good at being able to articulate change agents. In fact, that's who brought it to my attention, back in the mid 2000s. But the way to counter that is you bring your own change agents, the people that want to speak the truth, that when they see these individuals from a group working together, seemingly not connected, but yet working together, you combat that. You don't allow them to push the agenda. And it's good to be able to say, no, I don't agree to that. You're saying we all should agree to this, and this is what should be our priorities or what our belief or our conclusion is, but we don't believe in that, then don't believe in it.
It seems like the surveys that Norris will bring to a town hall in a way is a change agent type tactic, because it's creating a predetermined outcome.
Exactly.
It's funneling the conversation. It's not allowing the people to say, hey, here's what I'm losing sleep over. This is what's really bugging me. But it is going to automatically direct and then a predetermined outcome as to what the discussion is going to be.
Let the people locally, if you're going to truly hold a town hall, then let people ask their questions and don't preform the questions and view all your talking points around that. Now, here's something I'm going to bring up too. Here's how you tell a real conservative from somebody that is not. It's free speech. The First Amendment really is the cornerstone, in my opinion, to the entire Bill of Rights. And I know we can fundamentally get into arguments because they are all equally important. But the First Amendment is so powerful in those 5 things that it guarantees to us as securing, our rights to these things. But one of those is the right to free speech, the right to press. Now, if you go to my Instagram feed, you'll see that I reposted a story today from Quincy Franklin, the BC preacher. Now, Quincy's background was he grew up in the Portland area, and he started live streaming events right when BLM and Antifa exploded on the scene. I think this was back in the Obama years. Might have even been back when Trump first got in, but it was when they started clashing with the Proud Boys. And he videoed the entirety of the lockdowns in 2020 and the 100 days of rage, I think it was, in Portland. Now, what I'll tell you is that Quincy and I had never met prior to him coming to my kickoff rally. In fact, he even in his live stream of my event, we didn't prohibit anybody from videoing us because there's nothing there that I'm concerned about that people would hear me say or see me do. But he even said at the time he didn't even know who the sheriff was. He came to several more of our functions, and I started listening to what he had to say, and I actually have a lot of respect for him. And he was a journalist long before he ever met Dan Wilson, became a Dan Wilson supporter. So during this event that Bob and Special Deputy Matari concocted with former prosecuting attorney Bryant Bushling, the whole event was advertised publicly. Anybody could come to this event being held at the Altar Church. They spent money on meta ads. We know that for a fact. And so it was a town hall of sorts. Now, again, the confusion is, and the lines were blurred with Bruce and Bob as to whether or not this was in their official capacities, because they identified themselves as Sheriff Bob Norris, County Commissioner Bruce Matari, prosecuting attorney Bryant Bushling, or was it actually a campaign event because Bob had all of his signs there and his apparel and Norris for sheriff. So this was an open event. Anybody could come. Well, Quincy was there in the front row streaming live like he does all sorts of events in Kootenai County. And wouldn't you know, but Special Deputy Matari's wife, Carla Matari, who was not born in the United States, I believe her father was a Bolivian general, and of course, Special Deputy Matari's from Washington, D.C., Virginia area before he came to Kootenai County. Carla, his wife, who is also the secretary of the Kootenai County Central Committee, former, I think, president of the Women's Federated Republicans. You get the picture. Somebody that should know better, along with Bob Norris's wife, I think her name is Susan Norris, they approached Quincy and told him, you cannot film. So we are at a public event where there are numerous other individuals there with a camera, and they singled out Quincy because they know that Quincy is a Dan Wilson supporter. And Quincy was not there on my behalf. He was there on his own volition. But Quincy has a very interesting video that I would highly encourage you to go see. The BC Preacher, that's the Black conservative preacher, Quincy Franklin, and take a look at how your local Republican leadership treats individuals that are not in their camp. So the question is, and you know, it's funny that Special Deputy Matari and Sheriff Bob had to send their wives to go do their dirty work for them, rather than to allow Quincy to stream things. And one of the reasons that they don't like this is because we have used Bob's own words against him numerous times to call him out for the crap that he says that is untrue. And they don't like that. They only want people filming that they can control the narrative. So they attempt to kick him out. In fact, they marched him all the way to the back of the church. He eventually was able to contact one of the pastors of the altar church, and then Special Deputy Matari allowed him to come back in, and I like that, allowed. But look, folks, I'm talking about the problems that we have right now, right here in Kootenai County. I've never kicked one individual out at any of my events when they were filming me. Because as sheriff, everything that I say matters. And I'm not ashamed of anything I say. Men of courage do not restrict themselves out of fear of man. So take a look at these videos. It's on my Twitter page as well. It's on Instagram. We'll probably put it up on Facebook. But this is what local Republican leadership is doing, and they need to be called out on it. In fact, Special Deputy Matari, County Commissioner Matari, you should probably have a conversation with Carla, and I believe that you owe Quincy Franklin, the BC Preacher, an apology. And Sheriff Bob Norris, if your wife does not understand what the First Amendment is, you probably should pull her to a side and then say, you know what, in the future, you probably shouldn't be going around telling people what to do if you don't have the actual grounds to do it. Look, as Republicans, as people that adhere to the Bill of Rights, people have the right to say what they want to say and to film things that they want to film in public.
One of the comments here is that, well, first off, my opinion piece is you've got Bob Norris, whose campaign slogan is running on his record. But then we've asked the question, what is your record? What have you practically done? What is the proof of what you've done aside from making proclamations and having them notarized?
Yeah.
So one of the comments here is what happened in that having the BC Preacher, Quincy Franklin, with Norris and Matari's wives coming in and it's like, you can't be here, violation of the First Amendment right. And the sheriff, your sheriff, people, your sitting sheriff didn't defend that constitutional right.
Yeah.
So that's actually evidence to, if you're looking for evidence in somebody who's running on their record, that's his record.
Well, there's further comment on that because in the Q&A section, Special Deputy Matari asked Bob Norris if he wanted to take a question from Quincy Franklin, and Bob Norris disparages Quincy and says, no, I'm not going to take a question from him because he spreads propaganda.
Yet, however, you had Special Deputy Matari showing up to one of your events to interrupt and disparage. And
Look, Bob and Bruce, you're bullies. You're actually little men. You've got a lot of people conned because they think you're nice. They're not discerning. But I'm going to call you exactly what you are. You're bullies. And you have no business, Bob, with your emotional outbursts, whether it's people that supported Eamon Bundy, when you're in the fair with your drop leg thigh holster, with your revolver and your howdy doody hat, getting in people's faces and telling them to get out of here because you don't believe in people's right to free speech. You have no business being anywhere near the office of the sheriff. And Special Deputy Matari, Yeah, well, I think you got yourself spanked pretty good with your 6-page letter that you sent out to everybody with your recommendations. And last I saw, Brett Surplus isn't doing very good in the polls, and Dale Gibney is not either. So, folks, I would strongly encourage you to start questioning these people. They're not your overlords. They're not your betters. They are your representative. When I am your representative as sheriff, I will do everything in my power to ensure that everybody in this county is secure in their life, liberty, and property. If I do something wrong, I will own it because I am accountable to the people. I've lived my entire life this way. I'm a man that is owned by nobody and cannot be bought or sold. I've never taken a federal dollar, never taken a state dollar. I'm not dependent on the government for my salary. I'm doing this. I want the privilege of leading the people in these very, very uncertain times that we have ahead of us, because I passionately believe in the rule of law and the way that our great country that was formed by the consent of we the people started out.
We're getting to just about an hour and 15 minutes for our live broadcast, so maybe hitting the end of your stride. No, probably not. You could. Well, one of the comments that I did put up on the screen is that she said, we watched the video. It was shocking. Everyone should watch it. So
which video?
It would be the one with that Quincy Franklin posted. So just remind everybody again, what is, I think I'm going to say, we will also share that to Facebook and put that on our website now that Quincy has published that and made it public. Yeah. But what is, aside from that, the easiest way for people who are curious who can go see it right now? Just remind us.
I would go to the BC preacher, which is the Black conservative preacher, Quincy Franklin. He's on Rumble. He's on YouTube. He's on Instagram. He's on YouTube. Did I say that already? X, Twitter. Anyway, he's all the platforms, but he's a man of courage. I've come to greatly respect him. I'm shocked, man, am I shocked at how many men in this community, and I'm talking about those men who are involved locally, lack courage. They're worried about votes. They're worried about their business. They're worried about all sorts of things. What you don't understand is there are so many men in the shadows. They're extreme men of courage. They're watching you guys do the things that you're doing, and they're disgusted by it. Quincy Franklin is a man of courage. Now, do I believe everything that Quincy believes? No, I don't believe everything that anybody believes. I mean, we're all individuals, but I have a lot of respect for that man because he's not afraid to call a spade a spade. And I'm not a politician, so you're not going to find me playing one way with one person and then, playing another way with another. I want to be this. That's how you get into trouble. When you start changing the narrative from one person to the next, you start getting yourself into lies. And when you get yourself into lies, you compromise yourself. And then that's when people start getting leverage and having to perform and do things that they would not normally do. I'm reminded of that passage of scripture. I said it before. He who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who makes his paths crooked will be found out. So shout out to all you men that are speaking the truth, being men of courage and women of courage. There's a lot of women in this community that do have courage. Keep it up. We are going to overtake this crap that we are surrounded with right now. We got a clean house, and I'm going to be walking shoulder to shoulder with you all as we take this county back.
We do have one other question. It's a change in gears. I don't know if you want to tackle it now. Can you quickly explain what Norris did with the reservation in 22 and handing off responsibilities to the reservation officers?
Yeah. All right. So let's see how brief I can be. Bob Norris wanted a helicopter program. That's a big notch in his buckle, and who knows what else they want to do with this helicopter. Kootenai County doesn't have the funds or the resources to bring on a helicopter full time. So there was a private group that formed a private corporation. It's not an LLC. I think it's actually a private nonprofit corporation. 5 donors donated over $100,000 each, or about $100,000 each. The agent that's listed for this nonprofit is Lieutenant Ellis, that is a Kootenai County Sheriff's deputy. And then the Coeur d'Alene tribe gave $200,000 towards this helicopter. And the idea is that this helicopter is provided free of service for the use of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, anything from search and rescue, to patrol, you name it. And it's a 2-year supposed pilot program, but they have used Kootenai County dollars to equip this helicopter with, I believe, like FLIR and spotlights. But anyway, so this took place in early 2022, on or around the first part of October 2022. Bob Norris and Lieutenant Ellis go before the Board of County Commissioners. We've got links. You can actually watch the meeting via YouTube. And they say, hey, we want to start this, 2-year no-cost pilot program. By the way, that helicopter program is not subject to FOIA requests, but the officers that are on board, so it's mixing private public, and that's pretty dangerous. The county commissioners give their approval, done deal. 2 months later, middle or first part of December of 2022, emails going back and forth between the tribal's council, their attorneys, and I believe it's Lieutenant Sifrin, or I'll get it wrong, but a lieutenant. They said, hey, we want the ability to take over all law enforcement functions on tribal land. And Bob Norris allowed that. So he cross-deputized all of the Coeur d'Alene officers, and is allowing them now to patrol and take calls for service in the county. So look, there's federal law. I'm not going to bore you with it, but it breaks down this way. On tribal lands that reside in Kootenai County, which is about 1/3 of the entire county as far as landmass size, if you are living on those tribal lands and you are a tribal member, you call 911. Dispatch, which is the same for the sheriff's office, says what's your emergency, what's your location, and then you want a tribal police officer if you happen to be a tribal member, or if you're a citizen of Kootenai County, do you want a deputy to respond? And conversely, if you are a citizen and not a tribal member, same thing. You get to choose that you want a Kootenai County deputy to show up to your call. Well, the word was given in early 23 that Kootenai County Sheriff's Office was no longer going to act as primary patrol down on the tribe. Now, I've heard this from several sources, to include current Benoit County Sheriff Tony Eels, who found out about it when he started getting dispatched up into Worley, which is Kootenai County, because there was no available Kootenai County units available for emergencies. So look, the bottom line is this is what it appears. It appears that the tribe gave $200,000, and then Bob acquiesced law enforcement for taxpayers and citizens of Kootenai County to a federal law enforcement entity. And that should concern you. It really should. And then we need to ask Bob Norris, what are you doing with the deputies that you're no longer sending down there? Now, it's my understanding that from time to time, he does an emphasis down there, but the records won't lie. We're going to be able to go back and find out of the 1,600 calls for service on average that the tribal areas get. We're going to find out how many times since 2023 the tribe was dispatched as primary to non-tribal members. So people, you need to help me out here. We're going to be posting online the emails that went back and forth. It also went before the deputy U.S. attorney, Tracy Whalen, who also signed off on it. Stan Mortensen, our current prosecutor, was also aware of what's going on. And look, we need to understand, was this something that Bob and his team could unilaterally do? Should have gone before the Board of County Commissioners, so that the taxation issue, the people of Kootenai County that are paying their taxes, to make certain that they're getting proper representation. And was it also a violation of state law? Was the Attorney General supposed to get involved? That's something for people much higher than me to discuss and delve into. But I can tell you this: Kootenai County residents should never have their law enforcement functions turned over to the tribe. That should not happen. You're paying taxes, you're a citizen. The sheriff's office is best equipped to handle your calls. If you're a tribal member, I completely understand your sovereignty and how your forms of government are with inside a government of, the United States, and we respect that. But yeah, I think that it looks very bad, and there needs to be answers. My people inside are telling me what's going on. They're the ones that tipped me off to this in the first place. I'm glad they did. So some of the FOIAs have been rejected. We have a legal team that's reviewing a lot of the rejected FOIA requests.
What's a FOIA?
It's basically the, I'm going to get it wrong, the federal, FOIA, I'm going to forget, but basically it's your ability for records requests, public records requests. Man, I can't even think of it. I'm having a brain lapse.
I thought it was the Freedom of Information.
Yeah, thank you. I knew. That's why I have you
I'm here for
Freedom of Information Act. So, governments have to be transparent and turn over records. So we get a lot of them obstructed, and they hide behind statutes, and they need to be sued. So we'll go before a judge on several of these things to find out. Anyway, that's about as brief as I can get it right now. Okay, I think we're getting pretty wrapped up here. As always, thank you for joining us on these events. I enjoy getting to interact with people. We're going to be having several private speaking engagements here coming up in the next week. We'll be having public gatherings. Be looking for us at a lot of events upcoming. We'll be publishing those on all of our platforms. You can go to the website. If you're out and about at any of our events, make certain you drop your name and your address if you want to be part of my campaign posse. We got signs that are coming. We got some big banners that we'll start throwing up in key locations. So if you see those, let us know where you saw them. But remember this, we are going into some hard times, and they are not going to be fun. They're going to need a lot of vigilance. We're going to have people that are prepared and ready to meet these hard times. You all see what's going on. It's not a mystery. But you need a leader who actually agrees with you and understands how dire the circumstances are that we are facing, and is ready to get the county united and ready to secure itself to maintain the rule of law. As I have said over and over again, and I want you to remember this, as Americans, we did not descend from fearful men. We descended from men that were fearless, that stuck to their codes and their creeds. They were self-sacrificing. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And that tradition has been passed generation to generation. We all know people that have paid for that right for us to be free. So stay encouraged, be of good courage, and as always, do the right thing. Signing off, have a good night. Drop me any questions that you have. Look forward to talking to you again next week.